Good afternoon. I think that's more like it. First of all, I thank God for the opportunity that we've had to meet here to share a few things together. I am Ayub Goloba Karema. I am a teacher by profession. I'm also a member of the panel of geography at NCDC and an evaluator of instructional materials in geography and ICT. I teach geography and ICT in secondary school. I'm a fellow of the International Leaders in Education Program of USA, a fellow of ICT and Pedagogical Development Program of Sweden, and a fellow of the ELIMU program of Norway. And I can say without fear of contradiction that in the lower secondary curriculum, Uganda has found the tool that can transform our education system. And many people are beginning to implement it and implement it very well, but there are quite a number of challenges that people still face. But today, I would like us to talk about the recent developments in the curriculum. That will be the main area of my talk. What are the recent developments? To talk about those, I'll give it a background where I will talk about why we changed the curriculum, because some people may not have picked that at some point. What changed? And then we go to the developments and what it means. Why did we change the curriculum? This curriculum is competency-based. Why did we change from the original curriculum to this one? We changed because we had new aspirations. We changed because the old curriculum, the outgoing curriculum, had issues with very many people able to graduate with degrees, first class in some cases, but going unemployed, unable to solve problems. So we changed to a competence-based curriculum that focuses on ability to apply and use the knowledge, understanding, skills, values, attitudes gained to solve problems. And when someone is able to use those skills and values to solve a problem, we call that competency. So we focus on that ability, not merely on the knowledge and skills. We changed a number of things. One, the subjects that are being taught, they were reduced. Two, the way of teaching and learning. Three, the way of assessment. And four, the method of reporting on the learner's achievement. All of them changed. That's why the head teacher pointed out that one parent saw a 3 and thought that that was the worst performance, yet it is the best performance. So we changed from norm-referenced assessment to criterion, meaning now we are assessing the learner based on pre-agreed criteria, pre-agreed standards. I suspect that you already know the key areas of this curriculum. We call them key learning outcomes. One, we want to have these learners becoming positive contributors to society who are able to design, to create, to evaluate products and processes to solve problems. Number two, responsible and patriotic citizens who care about others and their society, who cherish the values that are promoted in the curriculum. Values of respect for the environment and humanity, values of hard work, values of honesty, justice, and fairness. Number three, we wanted to make sure that these learners become lifelong learners. These are people who are able to continue learning even when the world changes. And number four, people who are self-assured, who believe in themselves, who have esteem, who know their own preferences and values. That's what we want. So we are no longer just interested in academic performance. We are interested in the whole individual in this curriculum. And then we focus on what we refer to as generic skills. Many of you parents refer to them as 21st century skills. Skills of communication, collaboration, problem solving, ICT proficiency, self-directed learning. Those are things that we are focusing on. Now, many of you have known this from the very beginning. We have sung this, we mentioned it when the senior ones, when these students came in senior one. We've talked about it some time back. Why is it that we are talking about it now again? It is because we now realize that it is no longer just talking about it. Now the National Examination Board requires that a school reports on these areas. So it is now a requirement that the school reports on the following areas. Number one, activity of integration. That one you have always known. That the scores these learners get at every end of chapter will be reported to UNEB. We have the circular where UNEB has guided as follows. That the scores from senior 1 to senior 2, at least for the current senior 3s and senior 4s, will be left at school. The scores in senior 3 and senior 4 will be transmitted to UNEB via an electronic system that has already been installed in schools and is on the internet. Meaning, all the senior 3s must have their scores captured. And they are captured on a term-by-term basis. The school does not report them in senior 4. The scores for term 2 must be reported in term 2. The scores for term 1 must be reported in term 1. And the head teacher has whispered that he requested you to bring the pass slips for the learners for senior 3. Why? We must begin reporting the scores. We don't keep them. The system is now ready to receive results. And what is happening is UNEB looks at the syllabus. The syllabus, such as this one, for each subject, has topics that must be done at a particular time. So there are topics for term 1, senior 3. UNEB expects that the scores for term 1, senior 3 are reported at the end of term 1. Now, issues of backlog where the school has not completed the topics now become issues of concern, because the topic must be studied and reported in real time, not at some point in future. So bring the tools so that the learners their scores can be reported. That is very important. Secondly, that is activity of integration. Now, there are many people who say we cannot trust the teachers. That will the teachers give the correct scores. But just today, they were reading scores of learners who were excelling, and you clapped. And they read scores of those who were not doing well, and you accepted. If you are able to accept the scores now, why don't you accept that these very teachers will send the correct scores? So if your child is not doing well, they will report that he or she has scored this. So it is time to start asking these young people to make sure that they are very serious. Please notice, parents, today I am talking mainly to you, the parent. We will always have opportunities for these people. This message I am focusing mainly at you. So scores for activities of integration must be reported. It also means that you need to talk to your child so that they become serious from day one. Many people think that the activity of integration ends at the score, that as long as I've passed the activity, that's it. The activity of integration is what prepares the learner for the end of cycle. The activities they'll do, the items they'll do in senior 4 resemble in many ways the activities of integration, with a major difference that the one of senior 4 will cover very many topics. Now they cover one topic, but the one of senior 4 will cover very many topics. With the same principles, it is scenario based. There is a problem to solve. The learner demonstrates that he or she is able to solve that particular problem. So encourage them to be very serious with the activity of integration. How it is assessed, I'm going to leave it here. But if you feel after I've talked that I need to talk about it, I'll come back and explain it. But I feel that you probably don't have a problem in that area. The second thing that has changed is what we refer to as projects. I'm delighted that young people came here and demonstrated a sprinkler system. I liked it that they were able to explain the science behind it, but most importantly, that they were confident they could explain their innovation and showed how it solves problems. That is an example of a project that they could generate. They used local materials, meaning that did not have to be very expensive. And they were creative. Now, if I were to assess them for UNEB, I would first assess the product, their model, but 95% of the assessment would go to them, not the model. If I were to assess out of 100, 5% for the model itself. But the 95% is I'm assessing them. And which are the areas where I would be assessing them? We call them competencies or stages of the project. We assess them first in the planning phase. The learners must plan the project, show whether they can identify a problem, defend the problem, get the objectives of the project, show how they'll solve it, the resources they need, and have a write-up, a real plan written on paper, a project proposal. They must write it, and we assess the proposal itself. We also assess them at that stage in 5 key areas. 1, their ability to communicate. And we don't simply look at them and say, oh, you communicate well. No. We have what we are now referring to as indicators. So we go first, generic skill, communication. That is 1. 2, use of ICT and mathematical computation. 2. 3, problem solving. 4, creativity. 5, cooperation. So we look at 5 key areas. And for each of the 5, we have indicators. There are things we look at. I'm going to read right here. This is the document that we use. It is 10 solid pages of document work. So I'll demonstrate, for example, when it comes to communication. It's a checklist. When I observe that quality, I put a tick and I communicate with the National Assessment Body. Let me look at communication. What are the indicators? These are the things the teacher will check out. When he or she sees them, she will tick and communicate to the National Examination Body. Listen, communication. Number 1, listens attentively and with comprehension. So during the project work, did this learner at planning phase demonstrate that he or she could listen attentively and with comprehension? If yes, you tick. If you did not see it, you don't tick. You just keep quiet as a teacher. Number 2, talks confidently and explains ideas and opinions clearly. If it was seen in planning phase, I tick. Number 3, reads accurately and fluently. If I not see it, I tick. If I don't, I have not observed. What we observe is what we send to the National Assessment Board. You don't imagine for the learner. Number 4, uses a range of media to communicate ideas. If you see it, you tick. If you don't, you keep quiet about it. Number 5, writes and presents coherently. Now, that is one area. So we have planning phase with a number of things, and we have picked on just one item of communication. Now we shall track that in planning phase, in implementation of the project, in reporting and dissemination. The project is assessed in 4 phases. Planning phase, we check. Implementation, when the learner is doing the project. Reporting, when the learner writes a report. And finally, dissemination. Today, what we saw here, the learners are disseminating. They were showcasing their project. And we check all those things. There are over 100 indicators just for the project. So what does this mean to you as a parent? Number 1, be interested in the learner's work, in your child's work. Ask them, which project are you doing? Ladies and gentlemen, when this curriculum was rolled out, things came little by little. We understood the activity of integration. We understood the project. We are able to test the knowledge and the skill, the cognitive, the brain work. We can test it with the activity of integration. We can test it very well with the end of cycle exam. We can ask the learner to write, and we shall know what knowledge he or she has and how he or she will apply the knowledge to solve a problem. But that is in the head. We call it in our language cognitive domain. But this curriculum is not just about the brain and how to use it to solve problems. It is also about values and attitudes. So how do you judge the values? They cannot be judged by sitting for an exam in the main hall. You've judged values, whether someone has acquired them, by looking at their behavior. Now there comes continuous assessment. Parents, for the first time in our curriculum, the values, the attitudes, the behaviors of learners are going to appear on the transcript of your child. For the first time, it has never happened. For the first time, what the learner does in school will appear. Let me give you an example. If a teacher is teaching about environment, and this curriculum is saying one of the values is respect for the environment and humanity, it is not just about the learner writing that, I value the environment. No, the learner must do things. Now, we observe the learner in 5 different areas. Number 1, we call it receiving. The learner must receive information about environmental management or awareness. And we report to UNEB. This learner was able to receive information. We go to class, we observe them at the compound, we play videos for them, we show them newspapers, they read articles. We say, yes, they received, and UNEB asks us, how did they receive the information? We report that. Received by watching a video. Received by listening to news. Received by reading an article. We tick on the checklist and we report. Then 2, after receiving, what happens? The learner responded to the information? We tick. Did the learner respond? Yes, we tick. How did he or she respond? One, by taking notes. We tick, took notes. Number two, asked a question. Number three, summarized. So the ways of response are also communicated to UNEP. Now, after receiving information, what happens? Many people receive information and they don't value it. Like many people drive a car, they read the road signs, they have received information, but they don't value it. The road sign says, don't overtake. There was one doctor who died. He was going for some introduction. People stopped him. Hey, people, stop. The other side, the river has broken through. They never stopped. They did not value information. Many people are learning about environmental conservation, but they don't value. So third stage is valuing. How do they show that they value information? They change behavior. Let us use the same example of environmental protection. The learner must demonstrate that he or she values that information. How? For example, by using the lanes in the compound, by planting trees, by collecting garbage, by not littering. Now we the teachers keep ticking when we observe that behavior. That is at level number 3. The learner has valued, has demonstrated that she values the environment. Stage number 4, we call it organization. The learner goes from just behaving to mobilizing others, saying at assembly, please, my friends, stop dumping waste. We tick. Oh, this learner has reached level number 4. Is mobilizing others, is organizing others. Writes an article and pins it on the school notes board. Makes a radio program, calls on other people. Please don't destroy the environment. She has reached level number 4, and we keep reporting that to the National Examination Body. At level number 5, we observe that the learner, that part has become part of her character. She just respects the environment and consistently. She will never dump, she will never cross a path. She finds people, it is just part of her. That is level number 5. Parents, we report those things to UNEB now, and they will appear on the transcript. Meaning, if your child does not demonstrate these behaviors, we will not tick them. Secondly, if your child is at the level where just watching a video on environment is a problem, we say that person never received the information. Is sleeping in class, we will not tick received information, no. What does it mean? That this is continuous assessment. It takes place all the time. The learner should be in school. Talk to them. If your child is ever appearing on the head teacher's list, we will not report that. But if we notice good behavior, we report it. So talk to them, because for the first time now, this will be on the transcript. The third area, which will be on the transcript, still in continuous assessment, deals with the use of muscles, hands. It is in our language, we call it psychomotor. Still, it is in 5 levels. For example, in sciences, most of you who did O-level, you remember, they used to give you your neighbor exam. Tie this string, let it be 2 meters. Then tie a weight, shift it, following instructions. Those will be no more in the national exam at senior 4. Those instructions of do this, do this, do this will stop at school. By senior 4, the examiner will provide the instruments and a scenario, and the learner should be able to construct his or her own experiment. I repeat, your child of senior 3 in senior 4 should be able to design an experiment, not simply follow instructions. How will that happen? And some parents are like, are you sure? Can that happen? Yes, it will happen. Because we have now been guided as follows. Teach the unit, but there are several areas that the learner goes through to grow. There is level 1. Level 1, we call that level imitation. The teacher does something, the learners imitate. The teacher says, now if it is a computer, let us bold. The learner also bolds. Type 2 words, the learner also types. In science, the teacher ties a string and the learners tie a string. Look, they also look in the area. That is level number 1. They are imitating. When we are starting teaching, that is the lowest level. Now, level 2 is manipulation. The learner works with instructions. Like the previous unit. We say tie a string of 2 meters. From here to here, the learner ties. Use a pipette. Suck up 2 mils. The learner does that. Put 2 mils here. Observe the change. Instructions. ICT. Type a letter. Make the character this big. That is level 2. Imitation. That is the previous unit. Out. That is now at school. Level 3 is what we call precision. The learner starts to work without instruction. The learner can now detect a problem and begin to solve it with his own method. Precision. However, at that level number 3, the learner still has issues. Does it wrongly. It is okay. Is learning, but is beginning to be independent. Then we go to level number 4, where the learner now works and is able to use different methods. We call that articulation level. The learner can draw a chart using this method, or a different method, or another method. And level 5, the learner works effortlessly without even thinking about it. We expect that these young people, by the time they enter UNEB paper, they are able to work effortlessly, accurately, without even thinking. We just give a scenario. This baby has this problem and there is this food. We put the food, we put the chemicals, we keep quiet. We say advise. The learner should be able to come up with an experiment to test the food that the learner will eat without us telling the learner, now cut the potato, now add this liquid, now do this. No. Put the things, design. What does it mean for you as a parent? Take interest in your child's learning. Number 2, take interest in discipline, because that can quickly influence how the learner performs internally. Number 3, the scores of activity of integration are not everything. Parents, the scores in activities of integration are not everything. Pay attention to this continuous assessment, because it is likely to become the greatest problem within our midst. I think I've given the quickest updates that are available. Let me just check if I have one more update. Just checking to be sure that I've left out nothing. Those are the key areas that are of today. 1, the project has become individual at Senior 3 and Senior 4. 2, it is time-based. You don't simply dream and say we shall do it at this other time. No. Number 3, there is an observation checklist, and you can have a look at the observation checklist. These have become public documents so that you can start guiding as well. And then for activity of integration, we have said Senior 1 and 2, the scores at the school. Senior 3, we report the scores to the National Assessment Body on a termly basis, and the learners need to register. And number 3 is continuous assessment, which are forms of exams that are given by the teacher on a continuous basis. Dear parents, if you observe beautiful behavior, things that the learner has done at home, as a follow-up to what he or she did in school, please inform the teachers. If these children who came here to show the sprinkler, if they went home and showcased it at a party and you took pictures of them showcasing it, bring the pictures to the teacher. If your child went home and helped in dredging a well, maintaining gardens, supporting other people, take pictures and bring them to the teacher. Tell him that, you know, my child did these additional works, so that they can also serve as evidence that the teacher can use. Without evidence, the teacher will not tick, because your integrity as a teacher is at stake. Teachers, please tick, because this thing is called an observation checklist. What you observe is what you tick. What you do not observe, you do not tick. So if you have evidence, that's when you do tick. Thank you very much. If there are questions, I'll be able to handle them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr.